Welcome to Plain Talk, where we're going to talk about food stamps today. And I'm using the term food stamps because Earl Pomeroy said I could. Uh, what did he say again, Chad? He said,
I used the term
snap.
snap, and he said, "Oh, I'm so sick of this. It's food stamp. Let's call it what it is."
He called you woke when you
Yeah,
said
he called me woke for saying snap.
I think that has to be one of my favorite Plain Talk moments so far. Although, we're joking around. On November 1st, the U.S. Department of Agriculture says that there's no more funding for the SNAP food stamps program. And they're not going to go to any extraordinary lengths, as we've seen the Trump administration do in other circumstances, to fund Border Patrol or the military or a new ballroom for the White House. They're not going to take any of those steps for people who are needing some supplement to their income to afford food for themselves and their family. So the funding runs out November 1st. Now, I know that the state of North Dakota is looking at how to respond to that. I think our state probably has some resources, but it's not maybe as easy as it seems if we don't have access to the mechanism for distributing them. Most people get these funds on like a debit card. Would the state of North Dakota be able to cut checks? Where would the money come from? How long would we expect to be, trying to make those beneficiaries whole? I don't know. Here to help us talk about some of that and try to figure some of that out as again, we're looming November 1st. So by the time most of you hear this, we'll be right up against the deadline because you're going to be hearing this on Halloween, Friday the 31st. Here to talk to us about that is Karen Ehrens. She is the U.S. Policy Manager for the Alliance to End Hunger. And Karen, did I miss anything in my analysis starting out? I mean, we're right on the cusp of people who need help feeding themselves and their families just not having help from the government.
Right. It's a never before seen event that's coming. Imagine you're a family who is working a job or two or even three, and then all of a sudden, with a week before the end of the month, you learn that the money you had been counting on to purchase food for you and your family isn't going to be there on Saturday, November 1st. Probably you have rent due, or you're a senior on a fixed income, scraping by till the end of the month, looking forward to when you might get some help so you can buy groceries. And then you learn a few days before Saturday that money won't be there. It's beyond frustrating.
Karen, the numbers I have is there's 52,347 North Dakotans who receive SNAP benefits. So I think often when people hear SNAP, food stamps, whatever, they think it's some narrow group of people. But 52,347, it's a big chunk of North Dakotans who depend on this. Who are those people? Who are those 52,347 people in North Dakota who depend on this?
Well, nationally on average, 4 out of 5 households that receive SNAP benefits have a child, an elderly person, a person with disabilities. So that's who gets SNAP first and foremost. So they might be your neighbor down the street. They might be the person that's sitting at the next pew in front of you in church. They're not gonna pride is such a big thing in North Dakota and the Midwest that people aren't advertising I get SNAP. It's it's hard to ask for help living in the Midwest. But it's great that this program for almost 60 years has been there in every single state on a regular basis as a reliable program to help people access food.
So tell me a little bit. You had said that we're on the cusp of something happening that's never happened before. Why? We've been through government shutdowns before. Why are we on the cusp with SNAP this time? In the past, did they take steps to make it whole, or what? Why are we on the cusp this time? What's different?
The timing it's come at the end of the federal fiscal year. Congress has not approved appropriations for the ag HHS bill that typically puts money in the account for SNAP. So the account for this year that started on October 1st hasn't been put in there yet. And neither has a continuing resolution for extending the amount of spending that happened that was going on in September when the government's timeline fiscal year ended on September 30th. So neither an extension nor the placing of new funds in those accounts.
So, Karen, you mentioned about 80% of folks nationally who receive SNAP are either have children, seniors, or people with people with disabilities in their households. I want to focus in on the kids piece really quick. Two different things. One, are school nutrition and specifically community eligibility provisions, are they affected by what's happening on November 1st? Are kids going to school being affected by this at all?
No, for now, it's thought that, for sure in October, there was plenty of funding, and it's relatively assured that the funding will continue because there is plenty of money in the child nutrition accounts in the USDA. So if people are finding out that they're not able to access SNAP and they haven't applied for free or reduced price meals at their school, they should definitely do that.
So one of the other things, Rob, I'm just going to jump in here to follow up on the kids piece of it. I think that's great, right? We want to make sure that our meals continue to flow. I think this is also a really good example of why North Dakotans should have universal meals. We can take care of our kids ourselves. We don't have to count on the federal government. But my concern about when 40% of SNAP benefits or whatever are children, those kids are now not getting the nutrition that they need on weekends, after school. And what happens when they come to school and they can't learn? They have different sort of behavior issues, all the things that I struggle with when I'm hangry. Can you talk about those effects on kids who maybe aren't getting those meals outside of school and what that means for them?
It's terrible. I was when I was working with the school meals administration in North Dakota, I once arrived at a school in a school that had a very high percentage of free and reduced price meals. I got there to review their programs on a Monday morning, and the children went through the line. They were just expectant. They were just like so glad to be there. Like it was quiet. And Chad, that when kids are in school in the lunchroom, but these meals are so important. But if you've gone through the weekend and you haven't had enough to eat, parents will do all that all that they can to make sure their children have food. They'll skip meals. They'll cut back on the amounts that they eat. But when things get really bad and there isn't enough for children, children can't learn to their fullest potential. People can't work in our workforce to their fullest potential if their minds are focused on trying to figure out where their next meal is coming from or where the funding is to buy their next meals for their household. So it does, like you say, it's a distraction when you're thinking. It kind of slows you down physically and mentally. So your brain is conserving energy and not fully focused or able to learn as much as you could if you had enough to eat, enough nutritious food, and were ready and able to focus on learning to grow as a child and into an adult.
So let's talk a little bit. I mean, what's going on in Washington, D.C. is what's going on. And the thing is none of us on this call really has a lot of influence over that situation right now. Where what the state of North Dakota is facing right now is what, if anything, can be done to address this problem until Congress gets back to where the federal government gets back to work again. So what does that look like? I mean, does your organization have some thoughts on what the state of North Dakota could do in the meantime, or other states to address this?
Well, first of all, the Alliance to End Hunger has called on the U.S. Department of Agriculture to use its authority and the available resources to prevent an unnecessary disruption in SNAP for the month of November and for as long as the government shutdown continues. So, legal scholars are looking at this. Legal scholars are not necessarily agreeing with what USDA is telling the states. But they could make this stop now. They could end this with a decision to release funds that are in an account, and to transfer some money over that would fully put enough money out, around $8 billion, to keep SNAP going through the month of November.
Karen, can I just clarify that? I mean, it's my understanding USDA had a memo in September that said these contingency funds would be available for this very scenario, and then they changed their minds. Is that correct?
Right. On their lapse plan that came out just at around October 1st, let me just check my notes here so I get the right funding. That in the USDA's fiscal year 2026 shutdown plan, the plan was posted online, but it's been taken down. It's still available in web archives, but it said that congressional intent is evident that SNAP's operation should continue since the program has been provided with multi-year contingency funds. They're also available to fund participant benefits in the event that a lapse occurs in the middle of the fiscal year. So, the folks who are looking at this really closely have figured that there is about $5.5 billion left in that contingency fund.
So again, that was on October 1st. So that was less than a month ago that they said these funds were available. And now a month later, they're saying 52,347 North Dakotans are potentially going without SNAP benefits starting on
Plus however many millions across the United States.
42 million
Yeah.
people across the United States.
There is legislation in Congress. I think Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri has it. It is the Keep SNAP Funded bill, and I should point out Senator Kevin Cramer is a co-sponsor. Essentially, and I'm reading, this is a summary of it from the Hill newspaper. The Keep SNAP Funded Act of 2025 would fund the food aid program for states across the country until the nearly month-long government shutdown ends. The Department of Agriculture can receive its allotments through appropriations or stopgap measures. So there is a bill to keep it funded. I'm assuming that's something you would support.
I think it's great that Senator Hawley has brought that bill forward. There's an accompanying bill in the House. I believe that Senator Ben Ray Lujan of New Mexico is going to be bringing forward a bill that would keep SNAP and WIC funded through November or until the shutdown ends. I haven't seen that one yet, but I hear it's coming out.
So again, we're talking about everything maybe, and I'm sorry to ask two in a row, but we're talking about everything sort of changing and we were just talking about the memo where, I agree that the executive branch could do things even without Congress acting to keep this program whole. Or Congress could act and pass this legislation that we're just talking about. I am not at all confident that either of those things are going to happen. Certainly not on the timeline between now and November 1st. So, are there things that states like North Dakota could do in the meantime? I mean, what should North Dakota? I mean, should we be giving money to food banks, making donations to food banks? I mean, obviously that would help, but it's not going to replace the program. So, as Governor Armstrong and other state leaders are looking at this, are there things they could do to help ease this pain for North Dakotans that could possibly be emulated in other states.
Yeah, I hear from a legislator that they're really working hard behind the scenes to bring together Health and Human Services and Public Health and Emergency Department to work with the Great Plains Food Bank. In Minnesota, they announced that they're putting $4 million toward helping purchase food for their food shelves. A few other states are doing things like that, and it's wonderful. It's great. I love to see that organizations and states are stepping up. However, that gap is very large. For every meal that's provided through the food bank network, excuse me, for every meal that's provided through the food bank network across the US, there are 8 meals provided by SNAP. So it's a big gap to fill between helping
Yeah.
make sure
And,
that
and to be clear, I wasn't talking about this as a solution.
Right.
Mhm.
The solution is for Congress to act, for the folks in Washington D.C. to get their act together. I'm just thinking, I guess mitigate is probably the right word. How do we mitigate this at the state level?
Right. Help make food available. It is the end of the harvest season, so maybe the state could purchase some fruits and vegetables that might be still in storage from local growers. Um, They could help Great Plains Food Bank use their network to purchase some more foods. Um, and not to forget the tribal lands in North Dakota who are most impacted severely by this because of many things, including that the LIHEAP, the heating funds that are available federally have been delayed and are not going out, and winter is arriving. So there are some tribal nations in North Dakota who have declared a state of emergency. There are even a couple of U.S. states that have declared states of emergency in their states to deal with this issue. It's not a small thing. Even if you don't receive SNAP or you don't get SNAP Rob or Chad, we'll all be affected because it's an economy thing. I looked up some figures here for how much money usually goes into states each month. So in Minnesota, there's about $71 million that goes into the economy to purchase food in Minnesota. In North Dakota, almost $10 million goes into the North Dakota economy to purchase food at grocery stores that people can use their SNAP EBT cards to purchase the foods that their families need. So it's going to be an economy hit, not just a people hit.
So, Karen, one of the concerns that I heard yesterday from somebody who had a loved one who's a senior citizen who counted on SNAP benefits is she was concerned that even money that they had on their card from previous months, they weren't going to be able to use that moving forward. But it's my understanding that's not true. If a SNAP recipient has money on their EBT card, they can still use that banked money moving forward. Is that correct?
Yes, USDA clarified to states that SNAP beneficiaries can use the benefits that are on their card as of November 1st, that won't stop working. Their cards will still work. The issue is most people spend all their SNAP benefits in the first 3 weeks of the month, so there may not be a lot on people's cards, but if they do have some, they should be able to still continue to use them.
Anything else for people? And by the way, I think one important thing to point out is, programs like this. You may know somebody who's using Snap that you didn't know they were using Snap. I mean, there's a lot of people. It's supplemental, right? There are a lot of people who work, who have jobs, and everything else, who need programs like this to help make ends meet. So, the impact of this may be greater than a lot of people listening expect. Maybe end up being a lot more visible. That being said, is there anything else for people who are, again, they use this program, they're dependent on this program, um, that they should be aware of, as this unfolds?
I would say just to keep checking from announcements from your state Department of Human Services in North Dakota, the Department of Health and Human Services, your county social service office for their announcements, because those are the official channels. Sometimes that rumor mill gets going. Also on these department websites, they have redirects, resources listed where people could go to find food. If you're someone who really cares and wants to make sure that people have enough to eat, contribute to your local food bank or food shelf or soup kitchen. Contribute food, contribute money, contribute your time. If you have a neighbor nearby that you're a little worried about, or a senior citizen that you haven't checked in on lately, make them a hot dish. Take it over. There are small things, there are big things that we can all do to come together to meet the situation at its time. The longer the shutdown goes on, the more these extra efforts are going to need to be sustained. So we'll work to help make sure that legislators get to the table and sit down from one another. Food has this way of bringing people together, and I hope that food can bring people together at all kinds of tables, at the congressional level, the county level, the neighborhood level.
Karen, I have one final question as we're wrapping things up. We know about the Great Plains Food Bank here in North Dakota. There's food banks all over the country. But one of my concerns is often it's very difficult for those food banks to reach into rural communities. Can you talk about the infrastructure that maybe a Great Plains Food Bank or other food banks around the country have to reach those rural communities? Because often when we hear about poverty or SNAP benefits, we don't think about the working poor or the folks in rural communities that are trying to make ends meet.
Right. So there are mobile food pantries that are set up to visit communities once a month or a couple times. So the Great Plains Food Bank is like this kind of big storage unit, and it takes food out to the smaller, in Minnesota, they call them food shelves, in North Dakota, food pantries. A lot of them are run by communities of faith. So your local church or county may have food pantries that are nearby. But you're right, the food doesn't get there as often or in amounts necessarily that people might need at this time. Folks, we stepped up during COVID to make sure that people didn't go hungry, and I encourage people to step up again to help one another out at this time.
Karen, thanks for your time.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Karen.
Thank you for asking me.